Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Finn's Faithful Podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight on this Monday evening. As you know, we're always live on YouTube and on X, and the Combine Week just wrapped up. We're going to get all into it. Dante was actually my guest. Just told me he was actually at Indianapolis, so that's fun. We'll break all that down, some highlights, some players he liked, who I liked, didn't like, or all in between. I'm sure we'll get into some more Dolphin stuff, but as I mentioned, to help me break all that down, I'm joined by Dante Collinelli, writer from Miami Dolphins on SI, among other things. Dante, second appearance on the show, man. Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I
Excited to
guess
be here.
I guess the first time wasn't that bad.
No, it was. If I remember correctly, it was right after the Tua injury. So I think this show will be hopefully a little bit more jovial. We'll
Yeah,
go with that.
yeah, that was a kind of that show wrote itself basically.
Yes.
All right, you mentioned the last time you came on was kind of, I think we talked backstage maybe after the Seattle game. A lot's happened since then. Tua, obviously, another, not the head, the hip at the end of the season, another season where he didn't finish the season to get him in the playoffs. Coach, GM back, the Tyreek Hill stuff. Kind of all that's happened since the last time I talked to you. Where do you kind of see now the state of the Dolphins, and what direction? Did anything surprise you, like any of them coming back, Greer or McDaniel, and kind of what direction you want to see this team go? Where should they go in this free agent and draft process here in the offseason?
Yeah, I'm not even remotely surprised that everyone was back. It is what I was expecting. Not a decision that I would have made, but it was the decision that I was expecting. As for my overall thoughts on the team, I think I'm in a weird place right now where I feel like I'm more optimistic than a lot of the people who cover the team and a lot of the people who, commentate on the team. And I think, look, the Dolphins are not a horrible team. They're not. They have good football players. They won 9 games last year. They're not some bad, awful, horrible football team. They have problems. They have holes that they need to address, and we'll get into that with the NFL Combine and some players who I think can help them. But this is a team that's going to have a decent amount of cap space. They have a lot of flexibility with the Teron Armstead contract now. They can move on from players like Bradley Chubb. They already got rid of Kendall Fuller. There's other cuts on the team. There's restructures that they can do. So this team's going to have a lot of cap space. They have good football players at the top. The big focus for this offseason, at least for me, is going to be figuring out the depth. How do we get to a place where one injury doesn't completely derail a position group, right? If you look at the Austin Jackson injury, that completely derailed the running game. How do we fix that? You look at the Jalen Phillips injury this year, that completely derailed the edge rush group, right? It was just Chop Robinson and a bunch of guys out there doing their darndest, and I appreciate them for that, but not exactly players that you want playing that many snaps, right? And I can go down the list. At safety, how do we do better than Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland last year? So for me, I think it is truly, if the Dolphins want to get over the hump, they have all of the resources and the ability to do so. The challenge is going to be they need to approach team building differently than they have in the first 3 years. And one of my biggest complaints with Mike McDaniel, and to a lesser but also kind of same extent Chris Greer, is that they're a little bit stubborn. They're a little bit stubborn. They like to do things the way they like to do them. And look, I think their process for the past 3 years, generally speaking, I have a few gripes, but generally speaking, they did a good process. So it's about pivoting. How do we take what has worked and what hasn't and figure out a way to kind of fill in the gaps? But, I think the fan base right now is very doom and gloom. I'm not doom and gloom. This is not a bad team. One of the advantages of my day job is I cover all 32 teams all the time. I am telling you, there are worse situations out there. There are so many bad teams who are in a worse spot than the Dolphins. So generally speaking, I'm like, I'm kind of optimistic. They have the resources to fix what was wrong with them this year.
Well, I'm glad you bring some of that hopium, that positivity, because we need it. None of us, I think, but I always make this point, like, we're not as bad as some other teams, but sometimes when you're in the middle and you're kind of teetering, it's actually worse than being the Tennessee Titans or a team like that that's well, not necessarily in this year's draft, but like picking somewhere high and having a chance to kind of get that franchise guy to turn it around. We're sort of teetering in that again, merry-go-round of mediocrity, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we've made the playoffs. Like, let's, I don't want to, say they haven't accomplished anything. They have. But the one thing you didn't mention, quickly we move on to the combine, but I'm interested to see Greer and McDaniel here because I haven't seen a desperate Chris Greer. I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? Like, to the point is, I mean, I'm assuming his job's on the line. Garfinkel cemented up there at the top, and maybe, he's the one in Ross's ear, and he likes that, Greer is kind of, without saying a better word, of a yes man, or I guess more of he goes in line and cooperates. He's not banging the table for guys. Like, I don't know if it's really this is it. Maybe some of those tendencies, like, hey, by the way, check out Dante's 2 articles he had recently on Dolphins Inside. They were good. And one of them's talking about Tyler Booker, how he's not a fit here, or they don't draft interior in the first round. Maybe Chris Greer knows this is it, brother, and I got to maybe change a little bit what I'm doing. You think that could play it? Maybe, I know it's maybe a crazy thought, but maybe a desperate Greer is a different Greer.
Yeah, I don't think it's a crazy thought. I think there's no version of history where I'm going to be on board with Tyler Booker at 13, but to your larger point of, hey, maybe let's not ignore guard for 5 years, right? Like and I think I wrote this in the article, there's a difference between drafting a guard in the top 15 and ignoring a guard for 5 years, right? They need to find some kind of middle ground at a lot of positions. It's not just guard, it's tight end. They haven't, Jonnu Smith, love him, had a great year. He's a third wide receiver. Dude's not a real tight end. It's fine. You got to find a real tight end. Somebody who's big and can block and can catch the football, that well-rounded player. But you can go down the line, right? Like, they kind of skimped out on replacing Christian Wilkins last year. Interior D-line, whatever. Like, Calais Campbell was a great signing. There was no version of history where he was going to play enough snaps to make up for Christian Wilkins, and they didn't really do anything else there, right? And I can go down the list. They signed a stopgap at corner in Kendall Fuller because the Cam Smith pick didn't work out. So can a desperate Chris Greer change his colors? I think he has to. I don't know that there's any other reaction to what has happened, because every single decision that you make in the NFL has a pitfall. If you determine that you need to focus on one position, you're going to neglect others. There's just no way to completely have no holes on a roster unless you're the Eagles and teams keep sending you first round picks and trades for no reason. So, like, they need to figure something out. They need to figure out a way to become more well-rounded. That's the way that I would describe it, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But it goes for defense too. You can't just keep drafting guys who run 4-3 all the time. You need some other pitches to throw at teams. And so I think Mike McDaniel is going to be desperate. I think Chris Greer is going to be desperate. And I would like to think that a 3-year sample size of successes and mistakes would point them in the direction of, hey, we can stay true to ourselves. We can still be the fastest team in the league. We can still get the ball out quickly, but also we have a few big guys who can block a little bit. And we have some guys on defense who like to hit, and not just everyone who runs fast all the time. So that would be my hope. It's certainly a possibility that Chris Greer feels like he's on the hot seat and he's finally willing to make those changes.
Yeah, that's the one thing that gives me hope that something might change. Like, we're not looking at this going to training camp again, saying how the heck we have a hole here, or how the heck are Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg our starting guards, when everybody in the fandom, if you and I know it, they should definitely know it. But speaking of the draft and speaking of the combine, I said this people were talking about this draft not being strongest. Yeah, it might not be at the top, but for what the Dolphins need, this draft aligns absolutely perfectly. Like, it's going to be hard, Dante, for them to mess this up. There's like, I say that with
that's a dangerous statement.
I know, but like, there's 4 or 5 positions they could go at 13, and you could say, okay, that was a need, and the players that are sitting there. Do you agree with that statement? This draft kind of fits exactly because I think this draft needs to be a tone center. Physicality, violence up front, change the kind of the demeanor and the culture of this team. You can't do it in one offseason, but you can start, you can tweak, and start to tweak young here in this particular draft.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, like, positionally it lines up pretty well. Like, I think the Dolphins need to add, like, 4 defensive linemen. This is a really good edge defender class. It's a really good interior defensive line class. I think they'll have their pick of the litter at, at the top of the draft. I think they can find contributors at the bottom as well. I look at linebacker as a position group with a lot of names that I like. Safety has some good names on the offensive side of the ball. I think it's a pretty good tight end class. So I think you can find if you want to take a guy like Tyler Warren at the top, the kind of do everything guy, you can. But if you want to wait and take a Jackson Hawes type player in the 4th round and just let him go block and you don't care about him catching the football, you're just going to pair him with Jonnu, hey, you can do that. So I think there's a lot of really good options. I think the interesting one will be the offensive line. I think that class is okay. I think they are in a bit of a weird spot, but we can get more into that in a bit. Overall, though, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of deeper position groups where the Dolphins are going to need a few bodies.
Yeah, we know they got a lot of needs. All right, so let's jump into it. You were at Indy. Kind of your general thoughts being there. I don't know. Have you? Is this your first time, or you've been there before?
This was my first combine.
Okay. All right. So, kind of your general thoughts being there. What stood out to you? Maybe for some of us who haven't been there.
Yeah. It's just a really cool event. It's really fun to kind of get the entire NFL and the entire media landscape in literally a single bar on the corner of the street, and you kind of just all mingle. And it's really cool. And then as for like the on-field stuff itself, I thought we had a lot of really good performances. If I remember correctly, the broadcast noted it was the fastest running back group, I believe, ever, and the fastest offensive line group ever. I'm a sucker for the defensive line. I thought we had a ton of really good testers in that group as well. Indianapolis is the perfect city for the combine. I think that if they change it, they're foolish. It is set up beautifully. You don't even have to go outside most of the time because of the skywalk. You can just walk between buildings and over the street. So you can kind of get everywhere super easily. So it was really cool. It was a really cool event. And then I think, look, the guys tore it up this year. I think there were a few position groups where I was like, I don't know. But like for the most part, I mean, we got some outrageous testing numbers this year. So it was a really solid group. And, I love the combine. We can argue how much it matters, how much it doesn't matter. There's good faith arguments to both sides of that. I think it's incredibly fun. Like I just like watching the guys go out there and run. It's awesome watching the jumps. It's such a good time.
Yeah, it's more than just what they do on the field. There's the meetings, the teams meet, and it's a part of the process. It's just another layer to evaluate. That's it. And just like how analytics are, this is part of the process. You want to see a guy. Okay, it matches. Yeah, he looked fast on tape. Does it match? That's all it is. I don't think it shouldn't move guys up rounds, right? But in my 5 to 10 spots, it's possible. If you're moving up guys rounds, then you're probably not doing your job right. All right, so let's start. You want to start with the quarterbacks real quick? None of them, the top 2 guys, did not perform. This wasn't a great group. I think like 2 guys ran. Of the guys who threw, Dante, anybody helped their stock for you, or being there, did you like how the ball came off their hand, or just nothing there for you?
Personally, there was nothing there for me. I would tell you that I think Jackson Dart probably had the best workout of anyone there, but I say that with the caveat that says more about the group that was present than what I saw from Jackson Dart. I thought his workout was pretty average overall based on the other workouts that we've seen in Indianapolis, but I think it's like probably the worst place to evaluate a quarterback. So for me personally, I didn't move anybody up or down my board after quarterback workouts. This class is what it is. It's not a very good class. We didn't get the 2 best players on the field for workouts anyway. It is what it is. I mean, I think you look at a guy like Tyler Shuck and, the ball comes out of his hands with zip. He's tall. He's a little bit faster. He ran the 40 a lot faster than I thought he was going to run the 40. So I'm sure he'll get some buzz coming out of the week. I'm sure Dart will get some buzz coming out of the week. But generally speaking, I thought this was probably the most underwhelming group that performed the entire time I was present. And frankly, there's no version of this where I'm going to be very complimentary of this quarterback class. So,
yeah, I agree. It was not, the top 2 guys. By the way, quickly, you have Ward 1, right? Is it or do you have Sanders 1? How do you look at the top?
So I'm a gigantic coward. I currently have them tied on my board, and I'm gonna hold quarter. I usually hold quarterback evaluations till pretty late in the process. I kind of like to do the rest of the class before I do
Right.
my final evals.
Right.
I will say this though: when I did midseason updates, I had Shadur Sanders a little bit higher than Ward, and it could change. Honestly, like real quickly, I think it's just down to preference. Like, what do you want? Like, if you want Sanders to come in and start day one because he's a cerebral player and he's a little bit more accurate, he's going to give you a better floor, right? If you're Kevin Stefanski and you're worried about getting fired, maybe you want Shadur Sanders, right? But if you're the Titans, Brian Callahan, if he has more job security and the new GM has more job security, maybe you want Cam Ward, right? You're willing to take a risk on a more talented but raw player. So to me, like, I don't really think I'm going to particularly love either. Like, whoever ends up being my quarterback 1 will be my lowest graded quarterback 1 since 2022, probably.
The Kenny Pickett
yes,
draft?
that was the Kenny Pickett year. My quarterback 1 that
similar,
year,
right? This is kind of similar.
Yeah, my quarterback 1 that year was.
I like Malik Willis. I got to say, I like Malik coming out.
I had Sam Howell, and I think I had a 3rd round grade on him. I think it was my quarterback 1.
It's just. They're the best of a bad below average group, right?
I agree.
I probably edge it to Ward because the ceiling, the playmaking, you know what I mean? And the arm is electric.
I agree.
He's like a shortstop throwing the ball. I mean, it's electric. All right, but I should give you for the Dolphins here, right? I don't want them to take a quarterback any high in this draft. I think there's too many needs, and this is not the draft. Let's see with the regime. If it resets next year and it's a good draft, let's see. We'll wait on that. But if you are, I know Milroe I know the passing liability, okay? I know he probably only reads half the field. He's raw. You thought Anthony Richardson was raw. This guy's even raw. But if there's a small minimal percent chance that it works out and you can match up physically with the Allens and the Jacksons and those guys, even if it's a small percent, I think this organization needs to take the shot. I know what Kyle McCord is. I know what Will Howard is, okay? I know what his ceiling. At best, below average starter backup, right? If you're going to take one, I don't know where the sweet spot for him is going to land. Is it 48 or is it a trade back or is it round 3 or somebody overdraft him because of the tools that drip? But if it's a minimum shot, I want to take a shot. If not, you want to get one in the 5th, 6th, 7th round to compete for your 3rd quarterback this year, that's fine. But anything in day 2, Milroe will be my guy, and knowing the limitations, and I'm omitting that. But I don't mind teams that take shots and they miss. I don't mind that. I mind when you take guys who the ceiling's not there very high, you wasted the pick, and you know what you're getting, right? So that's my rant on Milroe. What are your thoughts on that? Am I crazy, Dante?
No, I can't take him in the top 50. You can talk me into it if they want to trade back into the 2nd round, if he's sitting on the board at 98, or if they want to trade up in the 3rd round. But I think they need to spend those first 2 picks on like dudes who are going to play this year and make a difference. But I mean, if my big board released tomorrow, I would have Jalen Milroe as my quarterback 3. So I'm there.
Yeah, I'm just saying they need a guy with some physical tools at that position.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. I think I brought that up on Twitter a few weeks ago. And
you did?
Said the last time that they had a quarterback with tools was Pat White. And I had to explain that I was in elementary school when Pat White was playing quarterback for the Dolphins.
You're going to get some responses there. You don't want to hear. First of all, I want to thank everybody in the chat. Steve, that Dolphins realtor, Tiffany, thank you. Everybody, Kenny, everybody in the chat, thank you. And if you're watching anywhere else, come on to YouTube. Please, guys, I know I hate asking, but it takes a second. Hit that like and subscribe, little bell. It only takes a second, and it really helps the channel a lot. Again, we're with Dante Colinelli, writer for Miami Dolphins on SI. We're breaking down the combine that happened last week. Dante was there. All right, so I think we're pretty good in the quarterbacks. The running back group, wow, love it. And I let's start here. How close is Amari and Hampton to Genty for you? Is it a big gap? But I've always liked Genty, the speed, the power, the raw power he runs with. Everything this guy does, he's a good pass blocker. How close is it?
Yeah, there's a small gap. I would describe it. I think I clearly have Genty as my RB1 and Hampton's like clearly my RB2. I would guess Genty's a top 10 player on my board. Hampton's probably going to land somewhere between 20 and 30, I would say, when it's all said and done. So a small gap, right? Like I think Genty's probably like my 7th player and So, I have a pretty high grade on Hampton, though, and I'm super hard on running backs because it's just the way that it is. But Hampton ran better than I was expecting. I was a little bit worried about what his 40 time was going to look like off the tape. I didn't think it'd be like prohibitively bad, but I kind of thought he'd run like mid to high 4.5s. Yeah. And he ran a lot better than I thought. So that was cool. Got to check a box there, right? Like you said at the top, that's what the combine's for. So I have a small gap between Ginty and Hampton, but I mean, this is a stellar running back group. There's not a lot of gaps from one player to another. You just kind of have like tiers of stacked players.
So besides those two guys, I would like to see Ginty run. Fast guys run. I always consider. I don't think Genty's speed is not an issue. Okay, the two Ohio State kids looked really good. Who are some of the guys you liked, and maybe give me a sleeper that you like at that position?
Yeah, I think I'll start with one of the big winners, which is Bashal Tutin from Virginia Tech. Just ran incredibly well. He reminds me a little bit of the conversation that Dolphins fans had about Jalen Wright last year. Is outside zone speed runner. Now I think Wright, they ran a little bit more inside zone at Tennessee, blah blah. But like Tutin is like a pure outside zone runner, so a good scheme fit. I don't think the Dolphins should really invest in a running back, but not the point. Damian Martinez from Miami would be another one that I think the Dolphins actually, if they have a 5th round pick and he's still on the board type player, right? Power, straightforward speed, lowers the shoulder, good contact balance. I think he ran a lot better than I was expecting in the 40. I was kind of thinking he was closer to like another high 4.5, 4.6 guy. He ran a lot better than I thought. That's a funny one. So I think those are probably the two guys that I would talk about off the top. I still like Caleb Johnson from Iowa. His time didn't really bother me. It's not really his game. I like both Ohio State guys. Judkins is like a kind of a weird evaluation, especially when he runs that well at 221 because he looks the part. You turn on the Ohio State film though, and I don't really see that speed at 221. Yeah. Turn on the Mississippi film though in 2023, different conversation. So bit of a weird evaluation, but I like the player, and obviously he tested very well. I'm a big Travion Henderson guy. I think he pass protects, catches the football, breakaway speed. I just think a player that's probably going to go in the 2nd round, you need to pair him with another back. He can't, he's not going to be a guy who carries the ball 20 times free. He's got too many injuries. But this is an incredibly deep group. I've watched like 20 guys and I still have like 3 more on my watch list. Like it just feels like it never ends. RJ Harvey from UCF ran really well this week. It's another sleeper I would point out. So, I mean, you just have like endless names. It's a phenomenal group.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And as far as it relates to the Dolphins, they're low. They have the smaller speed guys. If they're going to address this group, I agree with you. Day 3, a Damian Martinez, somebody with some size, short yardage, even you like a Scotabo if he goes to day 3, something like that. They don't need the speed outside zone running back. They have Jalen Wright. They have A-Chain. They need somebody to complement that group. So I think this is a good draft, like you said, 4th, 5th round. You take a Martinez. I'm not as high on Ollie Gordon as people are fascinated by him. And we mentioned the combine doesn't mean nothing for him. I didn't like the way he moved. Just a little part of the process. I was already down on him, and he didn't change anything for me there. Not I know it's underwear Olympics, but again, they mean something. Not every team's out there for nothing. I'm not a huge Ollie Gordon fan, but again, I think this is where we talk day 3 is where the Dolphins probably should feel comfortable. I like the Florida kid too, Montrell Johnson. I like him. I think that there's better football ahead. But yeah, I think size there at that position. Anything else to add on the running back or?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's go to the tight end group.
Okay.
Another good group. And I think let's start the conversation here at 13.
Mm.
I know this is kind of the guy. Every year the Dolphin fans fall in love with the guy for that pick. It looks like this year it's Tyler Warren. I'm not taking the tight end at 13. He's not Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers went 15. There's going to be too many other better players. If a lineman, edge, a safety there. I just don't feel comfortable, especially with the depth of this draft, doing a tight end at 13. Before we get into specific players, how do you feel about that kind of argument at tight end at 13? Are you okay with that?
I think unfortunately, to answer your question, I have to talk about a specific player. I think if you're talking about a player like Tyler Warren, I am okay with that. The way I look at draft selections for teams, right, is I think about, if I draft a player with the 13th overall pick, what are my expectations for that player? My expectations for that player is that they're an above average NFL starter for 5+ years, right? That's my expectation for that. So then I go to my board. Do I project Tyler Warren to be a 5-year plus starter at tight end? I do. Okay, so the value matches up, the evaluation matches up. For the Dolphins specifically, I'm not saying Tyler Warren's my favorite pick at 13, but I think when you talk about the offense, what are the number one problems that the offense has? They're not physical enough. Perimeter blocking isn't bad, or is bad. They don't really have like a tough middle of the field yak guy, right? So those are like 3 problems that I have with the team that Tyler Warren solves instantly, right? I draft Tyler Warren. He doesn't need to be Brock Bowers. He doesn't need to have 100 catches and 1,200 yards because he's going to give me more as a blocker. He's going to seal the outside lanes better than Julian Hill and Jonnu Smith. And so, again, is he my favorite pick at 13? No, but I'm perfectly fine with taking a player who solves a multitude of problems for me. He's a player who not only solves problems, he now imposes problems on defenses, because the Dolphins don't have anything resembling Tyler Warren on offense. When you defensive game plan for this team, you go in and you say, okay, I need to stop speed. How do I stop speed? How do I stop speed? How do I stop speed? Everybody on the team speed. Hill, Waddle, Achane, Smith, Jonnu even. Tyler Warren gives you a tough physical presence as a receiver and a blocker. And I think that solves upwards of like 5 problems on offense. Me personally, I'm okay with taking that player at 13. I think there would be other players there that maybe I value a little bit higher, but I've been doing this since 2018. You kind of learn to not pin yourself down into certain players, certain picks, certain positions. When the Dolphins draft a player, the first thought that I have is, okay, why does this make sense? Why is the team doing this? And then, sometimes I don't get there, right? I asked myself that question about Patrick Paul last year, and I didn't get there, and it looks like I'm going to be wrong, which is great. Yeah. So, you never know. But, for me, it's less about Tyler Warren's a tight end, therefore he's not valuable, and more about, hey, I think he does a lot for the offense. I think he makes Devon Achane better. I think he makes whoever's playing tackle better. I think he makes the receivers better. I think he makes Jonnu Smith better. And then you get whatever he gives you from a receiving game perspective. And I think he can give you a lot. He's a top 10 player on my board. I think he's one of the 10 best players in the class overall. So I like Tyler Warren. I would consider him at 13. It just depends on how the board falls.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with you. It wouldn't be my first choice, I guess. If they did it, I wouldn't hate it. But you kind of sold me on the pick there. You banged the table in the war room there, Dante. You're saying they don't have a player like him. I agree. But my guess is there something similar they can get in round 2 or 3, like some guys we'll talk about here. How did you think of the group? I know everybody's buzzing about Mason Taylor. Was he as good in person as everybody's talking about?
Yeah, so I got a really good look at Mason Taylor when I went down to Mobile for the Super Bowl. I thought he had the Super Bowl, the Senior Bowl. It would be terrible if they held the Super Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Yeah. But
something went wrong in the world.
Yeah, right? So somebody screwed up. It was a big scheduling problem there. Yeah. But Mason Taylor looked phenomenal at that event. I remember leaving that event being really impressed with him. I thought he was maybe the second best tight end in attendance, only to Elijah Arroyo. And he followed it up with the combine. I wish he had ran and done tests, but he did look really good in on-field drills, which is what you expect. If you watch the tape, he's a smooth, agile pass catcher, strong hands. I think one of the things that I really took away from his Senior Bowl performance is that he's a better route runner than what you see on the LSU tape. That seemed to be very much a product of the offense. They had him running a lot of just, sprint routes to the flat, easy outs, hitches, not really testing his movement skills and one-on-one man coverage down the field. Got to see that at the Senior Bowl. I was super impressed with that. So I like Mason Taylor. I think when you start to talk about whether or not that player is a value proposition, right? How much of Mason Taylor are you getting in Tyler Warren? To me, Mason Taylor is not a player that I would expect to be a good inline blocker in year one. To me, you're going to have to wait a bit. He needs to get stronger. He needs to add weight. This is not a player who was an overly productive blocker at LSU. He was okay. I think you like what you saw and the future, right? The developmental player. But again, if the Dolphins view Tyler Warren as kind of a fix-all for a lot of problems, to me, you're not going to find that player later in this class. You're just not. Now, if you view blocking as the primary problem and you're not worried about downfield receiving, contested catch ability, that player you can find later.
Gunter Helm or something like that.
Yeah, so you could look at a player like Gunter Helm, who ran on a bum ankle. He had a really bad time, but he twisted his ankle. So that's kind of a weird one. Hopefully he runs at his pro day, because I actually do care about his 40, especially 4.8 on a bum ankle. Maybe he runs like 4.5, which would be great. So he's a guy that I would look at. Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech is just a pure blocker. He's not giving you anything in the receiving game, but if you take him with a 4th-round pick, to me, right, that's a great compliment to Jonnu Smith. You just ask him to block, go out there and knock heads. He solves a few problems for you as a day 3 pick. So I like Mason Taylor. If the Dolphins take him on day 2, I'm certainly not going to be upset about it. I think that's adequate value for that player. But expectation-wise, I'm not expecting Mason Taylor to come in and kind of change the offense like I would a player like Tyler Warren.
Yeah, you know a guy who I like, probably it's obviously a later on guy, Fedoni. He's been hurt. He's only had what 2 years of experience, always hurt, but I mean he's a really good pass. I mean he's got length, athleticism. He tested okay, ran 4.7, but he jumped 35.5. He's really good with the ball in the air at the catch point. I just think he's a guy you may get later on, and it's just a really good tight end in the NFL if he could stay healthy. I don't know your thoughts. Sort of a sleeper kind of Fedoni. I don't know where you think the range of him. Probably early day 3, something like that.
Yeah, I would think he's a day 3 player. I haven't done his final eval, but he's another guy I saw in Mobile. He's big. Like he looks like an NFL tight end, right? Like when you go down there for the combine, you go down to the Senior Bowl, so much of that evaluation is like, do these guys look like NFL football players? And he looks like an NFL football player. He's kind of have to figure the rest out, but that's kind of the darts that you want to throw on day 3, right? It's okay. He has the physical traits. Can I teach him the rest? And then that's kind of the value proposition you get into on day 3.
Anybody else stand out to you? Ferguson. What about the local kid here, Arroyo?
I think Arroyo is, look, if you're looking for a slot weapon type player, you're asking him to run routes, play in the slot, beat safeties and linebackers one-on-one. I think Elijah Arroyo is going to be really high on your board. If you're looking for an inline tight end, somebody to block, somebody to help your running game, you're probably not going to be as interested in Elijah Arroyo. I don't really think he gives you a ton in that area. But he is a really impressive athlete. He actually got banged up down in Mobile, and I don't believe he tested this week. So would have loved to see him test just because I think the numbers would have been outrageous. I mean, he was cooking people in Mobile. I mean, just absolutely killing those corners in one-on-ones. Not that that's a great environment for anyone. But you saw the movement skills, right? Stuff that would translate. So he's really, I think, a good player. I think he probably goes in that day 2 range with Mason Taylor. It'll be interesting to see which one comes off the board first.
Yeah, so it's a good tight end group. I think they'll definitely a position if the Dolphins want to address, they can definitely get it here in day 1, day 2, and even early on day 3. There's some guys I like. Again, guys, we're with Dante Colonelli, a writer for Miami Dolphins SI. Make sure if you're watching anywhere but YouTube, please come over to YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button, help support the channel. I know it takes just a second and it means a lot. All right, wide receivers. This group, how did you feel about it? Obviously, Hunter. By the way, do you see Hunter? I see him as a corner who can play wide receiver. I don't know how you feel about it, but
I feel the same way.
Yeah. He didn't work out, but some guys who impress. I'll tell you who I like. I like the 2 Iowa State kids a lot. A lot. One of them, speaking of the Dolphins, before we get into this position, they need to add some size here if they're going to get. Now, the question is, will they, right? I know you kind of, I think, did you tweet or wrote something about that? Like, I think with Jaden Higgins, this is somebody they should. He kind of reminds me a little of Alan Lazard-ish, that kind of size, good speed, good route runner. He looked impressive. Noel looked impressive. will they go size? I know you said they won't, but remember we talked on the top is Greer desperate, right? These are the things we're talking about. Will it change here? Who did you like out of that group? Some guys that stood out to you.
Yeah, I did write about Higgins in my article about, hey, these are 5 combine performers who I thought maybe could fit the Dolphins, might fit the Dolphins, right? They had really good weeks. Higgins made that group in an awesome week. He ran well, he jumped well, he tested out of the gym, he was awesome. I would like to see them add some size. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't at receiver. I'd like to see them do it. I'm frankly a little bit pessimistic. So I kind of wrote that in the article. I said, hey, I think Higgins can give you a lot of things that you don't have. I think you probably have to take him at 48 if you're going to take him. I don't know that they're going to do it. Jalen Knoll, to me, feels like maybe a little bit more of their type. He's smaller, slot, speed, vertical guy. I watched him well back in November. I've been a big fan of him for a while now. I've had a day 2 grade on him forever, so he kind of verified my eyes this week, which felt really nice. It's always good when you kind of have those players through the process that you just kind of track. And so he's been one of those guys for me. I think he gives you really good route running, really good toughness, has strong hands, can finish through contact. I think he can be a return guy for you on special teams. So he adds a little bit of value there. Really good speed, vertical threat. I mean, he jumped out of the gym. Did 23 reps on the bench press, which look, not a drill that typically, lends itself to any NFL credibility, but he's like 194 pounds, man. He threw 23 reps on the bench. He led all receivers. That's just like, to me, that says less about like anything that he does on the field, more about his dedication to football. This guy trains his butt off. For a wide receiver to do that many bench press reps at that size is just wildly impressive. So that's kind of where I'm at on the Iowa State guys. I think if you're looking at like other players I would target for Miami, I think Jack Besh from TCU stands out. He's kind of a guy that I think is in that size category. So I don't know if they'll like him, but I think he really brings a lot of that blocking on the perimeter that I want to see, that contested catchability that I want to see. And I would say the same thing about like Io Manor from Stanford. He's 6'2", so he's not like super big, but he's not small either. And he blocks his butt off on that Stanford film. So he's close, right? Like he's a little bit closer.
He's like Ezekama size,
Yeah, right. So like there's a chance maybe he's on the board. I'd like to see them pick him. I thought he had a good week as well. He tested pretty well. This receiver class, I don't know that you're looking at a group of players that is overly great, but I think it's deep. I think you have a lot of guys who fill certain roles, right? Like we just talked about Higgins, Ayo Manor, and Jack Besh as like potential size guys, but then you have Jalen Knoll, you have Xavier Restrepo, you have your Jalen Royals type players who are smaller guys who can give you a little bit of everything. They have good vertical ability, good short area ability, but they're not the biggest guys in the world. So I think you have kind of, even at the top of the draft, right? You have Tet McMillan, who's a big size guy. You have Luther Burden, who is, a Deebo Samuel type player. You have Matthew Golden, who's like he's kind of like a
ran well, huh?
Yeah, he ran great.
Well. I was surprised. Did you see that on film?
No, I did not see that on film.
That always scares me.
But I did have Matthew Golden as a top 30 player coming in the week, so we're going to take the win. But no,
we'll take it.
I did not see
on all 3 levels. He can run routes.
He's
good, man.
I agree. He's a really good route runner, but I did not see 4.29.
He made some money. He made some money though.
Yes, he
definitely
did. Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned McMillan. He seems to be dropping in the mocks and stuff. It surprised me because he didn't run. At 13, like, is he somebody you think they should look at? Because he would kind of transform that room. He's kind of that Drake London, and if you're dreaming, you squint your eyes, maybe Mike Evans-ish, you know what I mean? Is that a conversation you would have in the war room with the Dolphins at 13?
So I would personally. They will not.
They will not. I agree.
I can almost guarantee it.
I think Burden would have a a better than
and I would lose my marbles if they took Burden in 13. I would look.
We're lined here.
Yeah, we can go back to the conversation we had about Tyler Warren. I'd start to think about like, okay, why does this make sense? Blah blah blah. He's not a bad football player. Like whatever. It wouldn't be the worst pick I've ever seen in my life. It's just, we got bigger fish to fry than another small dude who runs 4.3. Like we gotta do something different here.
So the receiver group, I agree with you. There's not it's good depth at the top. It's not like those years we've had in the past, which it levels off. It'll get back to that. All right, so the group that everybody's going to talk about is the offensive line, and you mentioned that the tackle position you didn't think was deep, or I think where this strength for the Dolphins is there's a lot of tackle to guard conversions in this draft. We're going to talk about a bunch of them. Starting off at 13, who are some of the options? Embo for me. When you look at Embo, his size, 6'5", what did he measure? 6'4", 331, I think Embo measured.
332 maybe.
230, something like that. Ran a ridiculous 4.91. Great blocker in the open field. Can pull. Minnesota, he is a guy I like at guard better than tackle. Like the arms are 34 inches. Like I think you put him inside, you got a monster there. Do you see him more purely at tackle, Embo, and where do you have him kind of in that range?
Yeah, he's my OT1 right now. Yeah. Here's the thing with like
the conversions
is that I think we spend a lot of time talking about that when ultimately it's going to come down to every team's going to have their own preference. We can sit here and litigate every single top tackle in this class as a potential guard because none of them, at least except for the kid from Minnesota, none of them are built like a typical tackle, right? So we can litigate Kelvin Banks, we can litigate Josh Connerly, we can litigate Armand Membu. So the kind of framework that I'm using is like, to me, I think Membu can stay at tackle. I think he can be a successful NFL tackle. So I'm leaving him there for now. Now, with that said, do I think he'd kick butt at guard? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think he'd be a kick butt guard. And I'll be honest, I think of the Dolphins' options at 13 at tackle or guard, that's probably the only one that I actually like. If I'm being completely frank,
I'm not as high on Banks. I'm not as high on Banks as I think the league might be. He's a guard to me. He is a guard.
Okay.
What's his name? The guy we just talked about. I lost Embo. Arm length 33.5. So people, he's not overly long. I just think they don't draft guards, but they can draft him as a tackle, kind of like they did with Tunsil, put him inside, kind of use that as an excuse. If the Paul thing, I know you said you're probably going to be wrong on Paul. I'm still not there on Paul. There was a lot of up and down last year for me. I'm worried about handing him that left tackle position.
They have to.
Yeah, they have to.
They have
but
to.
They have
we got to start figuring out if he can play.
Right. But no, they're going to. But I think that's why the Teron Armstead thing is why they got him in the back pocket,
right?
In August or September, is okay. You still work for us. You're still on the payroll in case this Paul thing falls apart. But like Embo, you could put him at tackle, guard. I mean, I agree with you. He's the one guy besides Campbell that I would bang the table for at 13. You can't pass up. I mean, I don't think he gets there, Dante. I don't think he gets it. I think 11 could take him. San Fran. I think a number of teams could take him up top.
Yeah, I think the offensive tackles in general are going to be the biggest wild card of the first round because it is really because these guys are like fringe tackle guards. It is really going to come down to how teams value these players, right? Because if a team talks them into themselves as Will Campbell as a tackle, which is fine, I would get that. I have him as a guard, but I would understand if a team talked themselves into him playing tackle. He could go at 4 to the Patriots. And so if that's where your run starts, well, now guys like Membu and Connerly and Banks, well, they all got to come up the board. But if the team views Campbell as a guard, maybe he slips to 10 to the Bears, and that's where your run starts. And now it's, okay, well, the Dolphins are only 3 picks away. Maybe Membu slides that far. So to me, it's going to be really interesting because I really do think every team is going to have each of these guys in a different bucket. I don't think it's going to be this kind of like, we saw last year, right, where the tackles, Joe Alt, he was a tackle, he came off the board, the top 5, nobody cared, it was great, awesome. It's just that's not the class that we have this year. Not that these guys are bad, because I do think they're good football players. It's just this is really more than ever. It's going to come down to team preference and what they want to accomplish in their own individual schemes.
Yeah, I got a couple guys like anybody who stood out to you. Kind of, you said maybe the Dolphin fans should keep an eye on, or just in general, guys you thought you liked.
Yeah, he didn't test, but Chase Lunt from UConn, I think, is a
6'8"
offensive
kid, right?
tackle. Yeah, he's huge. He's long, and he is an outside zone blocker. So I think if you're on day 3 and you kind of want to take a developmental tackle, if you don't take one a little bit higher, or you don't invest in that player in free agency, he's one that would stand out to me. I also like Carson Vincent from Alabama A&M. He's a guy that I got a chance to see down in Mobile. I was really impressed
Yeah, I
with how
like him.
he looked, kind of stepping up against better competition. His testing was like fine, if I remember correctly. I don't think he tested out of the gym, but he tested fairly well. So I like those two guys as like developmental players on tackle. On the interior, I would look at like LSU's Miles Frazier as a potential day 2 guy. I think if you pair him with some free agent acquisitions at guard, I think you have a really nice a group of players. He has some tackle guard flexibility at LSU, and he looked really good playing tackle and guard at the Senior Bowl. So that would be kind of a guy that I would point to. Obviously, I'm a huge Gray Zabel believer. If they can pick him at 48, I don't think he's going to be there. I'm pretty sure he's going to go in the first round. But, if he is there, hey, man.
He'll be a Chief. He'll be a
yeah,
Chief, right?
Probably.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Or the Eagle.
Yeah, he seems like him and Wyatt Mullum from West Virginia seem kind of like guys who are going to be that late first, early second kind of playoff team. A couple guys I like, Savanea, okay? And I'm glad he ran. Look, I have a hot take. Like if they took – I know you probably killed it, but if they traded back a little bit, or even if they shocked everybody and took Savanea at 13, I wouldn't hate it. Now listen, dude, this guy's a day 1, 3-year starter, day 1 right guard, day 1. I'm glad he ran 4.95 because I know people were concerned with the scheme fit, but I saw enough athleticism and you switch him inside a guard. I think he's a Pro Bowl guard in 2 or 3 years. That's how highly I think of this kid, and he brings that nastiness that they need. The guy just eats space, man. When you watch him, like he's that dude. I like Savanea. Ezra is a guy who's interesting because he's athletic, he has size, and he's really good in space. And he's used to that. Minnesota runs a lot of that outside zone, I think. So he's used to it. He's another conversion, but also can play in tackle. So it's very weird, man. Like how their evaluations, they're really gonna have to do the homework on this class because, like, I think their guard, unless you're gonna get a Rutledge around a pure guard like Rutledge in round 2, might be the tackle position. What do you think of those two guys, Ezra and Savanea?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd take 7A at 13, but you can talk me into it at 48. We can have a nice conversation at 48.
I've always been in the middle, late first.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
What do you like about him?
Early second. No, but he's got some juice. He's a nice, powerful player. I'd be totally fine if they took him, and plugged him in. I think that's a good question. Will James Pierce make it to 38?
We'll go to the edge next. We'll go to the D-line next.
That's a good question. There's a lot of weird stuff about that. That's a weird evaluation.
That is.
Urzare to me is a tackle. I have no interest in seeing him playing guard. Yeah. He's just not the type of player that I like at guard. He's too big. I don't like big guards. I want squatty guards. He's like 6'6" plus with the huge arms. Put him at tackle. Let him live out there. But I like him. He's a good player. I have a firm second round grade on him. He'll probably finish inside my top 40. So good football player.
Yeah. Anybody else stand out? I'll tell you a guy, a later, not a sleeper, but like I can see a guy the Dolphins liking is like Joshua Gray.
Yeah,
5-year starter, a little undersized, can move. Don't be surprised if Joshua Gray is a Dolphin in some round there. Probably what, 3rd, 4th, something like that, middle of the draft.
Yeah, I would say probably early day 3 would be my
round.
guess.
And if he's there in round 5, I could see them because they got 2 4s and 2 5s. Somebody like that. Really good group. This is a really good group. I think the Dolphins should dip into it, probably double dip into this group, plus with free agency. Okay, you just mentioned it. The day. Welcome everybody in the chat again. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. The day. Dante will pierce and make it to 13. All right, let's start with the D-line. Let's start with him. Easy gas. This guy is just gets out of bed, runs a 4.5. These guys are straining themselves, doing every little thing to get it. He probably, if he really tried, probably could have ran 4.43. You know what I mean? But he just wakes out of bed and runs his 4.48 guy. Like just body. It's lobby player. You come off the bus with James Pierce.
Yeah, he's a super weird evaluation because he's an undersized, explosive power rusher who doesn't bend the corner and doesn't play a lot of snaps. And so I have a guy who his traits do not match his physical ability. And so that to me is a really difficult evaluation. To put it in the context, though, a lot of what you just talked about are the boxes that every good pass rusher at the NFL level checks, right? You look at the first step explosiveness, the ability to win through the chest of opposing tackles. You don't have to rely on your speed. That's all good. Those are good traits to have. I think I have James Pierce inside my top 20 right now. However, I think you have a player with a high bust rate to me. Like, this is a player who I don't know if I'm overly confident that his ability to win through the chest of tackles at 240 odd pounds is going to translate at the NFL level. I don't know. And he didn't run the 3-cone, and he doesn't have great bend on tape. And so it's just kind of like,
it's a swing.
Yes.
Like, you tell me in 3 years from now, he's like one of the top 5 players in this draft.
Sure.
Or he's like almost like backup, or has been traded, or has been on his third team. Like, wouldn't surprise me. That is.
Yeah, no, I agree. So will he be there at 13? Yeah, I think he will. I have to be careful. I would not be surprised if he slides a significant amount of picks.
I think he'll be there. I don't think they'll take him anyways, but I think they'll be there. A guy you talked about, Shamar Stewart, somebody you mentioned in your article. He's a tough one for me. It's almost like it's the Chop Robinson argument, production versus traits, but he's a different type. He's long. Chop wasn't as long. I think Chop's first step is probably as good as anybody's. Like,
yes.
Like there's not many of those. But this guy it's another upside swing, because they don't make them. If you were gonna spit him out of a computer, this is what a DN looks like. He's a weird evaluation for me. I don't know where I'm comfortable yet, where I would take him. Is he in play for you at 13?
I would get a speeding ticket running the card to the podium with Shamar Stewart's name on it at 13.
You're banging the table for him.
Oh, yeah, dude. I love this guy. I think he's great. I agree with you on the upside swing. I think there is some risk with selecting him. What made me feel better about it is when you watch the tape, he's a really good run defender. So if I draft him at 13, and you know what? He's just an athletic freak. He doesn't quite put it together. He gets a couple sacks a year. Obviously, that's not a great pick. I'm going to feel bad about that. But at the end of the day, I'm getting a strong, long, tough, high motor player. Like, he's not going to be like off my roster in 3 years. Like, he's just too
like James
athletic.
Pierce could.
Yeah, James Pierce, like, there's a part of me that's like, man, he might get cut in like 2 seasons. But like Shamar Stewart's just too big, too strong. So, like, to me, I don't know that his floor is as low as everyone thinks it is. But I might just be a little bit higher on him. I've been on him since like October. Like, I remember watching Texas A&M on TV, and I was like, "Who the hell is number 4?" And like
I want to love him, because when I watch him, like, I'm thinking, man, is this too good to be true? Everything I look at, and then then when you see him work out, but it's just, I don't know. There's a little something there that's I'm not all the way.
There is
all the way there, but man, I agree. Again, another player. Like, I'm more comfortable with him than James Pierce by a mile.
Yeah,
like Stewart, I know you said it best. I know Stewart's going to be on my roster in 3 or 4 years in some capacity. Yeah, I think the floor is higher than people. I think you made an excellent point there.
Yeah, I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think Stewart is probably the guy that I want the most at 13. I don't think he's going to be there. I don't think he gets that far. No.
Okay.
No, so I'd be surprised.
So the other guys that performed there that stood out to you, I'm not a huge Landon Jackson guy. I know we might differ on this. He worked out well. I'm not as high on Landon. I know there's a lot of buzz around him. How do you feel about Landon?
So Landon is what I call a railroad track player, where
I like that.
if you keep them on the railroad tracks, they move very quickly. If you ask a train to turn and there's no tracks, the train tips over and it's not going anywhere. That's Landon Jackson to me. You keep him going in a straight line, you're golden. He's great. Looks awesome. Okay. You ask him to bend an edge, you ask him to turn, change directions. Nah, That's not his game. It's not happening.
That's a problem for me, you know.
Yeah. So like I think so. I have like a 3rd round grade on Jackson. I actually comped him to Emmanuel Ogba.
That's a
He
good comp.
reminds
Good,
me
yeah.
a lot of the Emmanuel Ogba, which like, look, I mean, he had a couple seasons where he had like, almost 10 sacks, which sure. So I have like a 3rd round grade on Landon Jackson. I think he's a good player. I think he's a long-term contributor to a D line room. I don't view him as I'm not shocked that he tested well because his linear explosiveness is great. I don't think he ran the 3 cone, if I'm not mistaken. That would have been like the drill where I was like, so I'm not surprised that he ran well. I'm not surprised that he jumped well. But to me, his reactive athletic ability is not very great, and to me, that's very limiting.
I know people are blowing him up at the combine. It's like, yeah, it's about the same one I thought. Like he's the same. He's the same one I thought pre to post combine. Anybody else? I mean, Mikael Williams is up there. Mike Green. Anybody else stand out to you that worked out? We'll wrap up the DN group here.
Yeah, those guys didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College would be another one that I would point to. A bit lighter, but I think he probably has the best hand technique of any edge in the entire class. And that includes Abdul Carter. I think if you're asking a player to win with pass rush counters, win with their hands, I think Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College is a really good name to pick out. I don't know where he goes. He's probably like a late round 1 to mid round 2 guy. He's undersized, so teams might bump him down the board. But if I could see a team really falling in love with just, hey, this guy just wins, man. Like he just wins, whatever. Yeah, and we're gonna give him a shot. So that would kind of be his range. I thought he had a nice week as well.
Yeah, I agree. Good. I would say good edge group, right? I'm curious to see the Dolphins dip in that market. I know they have Chop last year, but there's some, look, I love Phillips, but he's been in with a few major injuries now, and that's to the lower half. It's not even the concussion. So it'll be interesting if they go in that group. Inside, this is the position I think the Dolphins have to address. That's a defensive tackle. And this probably stood out to me the most at the combine. Like, usually there's like 3 or 4 guys. Like, I remember a few years ago, Kenyon Benton. There's like 7 Kenyon Bentons in this draft. There's like so many of these guys, right? The guy at 13 I'm banging the table for, Kenneth Grant. And I'll tell you why. This team also needs some help at zero tech, but there's not many guys at 331 that move like him. He can go down to the 3 tech, compliment Zach Sealer. Look how he complimented Mason Graham. I actually like him for the Dolphins as much as Mason Graham. I said to you at the top, a tone setter draft, physical up front. I wanted them to draft T'Vondre Sweat one year. I wanted them to draft the Clemson kid that went to the Giants. I wanted them always to draft Jordan Davis. Whether I wanted them to get somebody like that up the middle of the defense and just set the tone of the organization. They need to be more physical, man. They're a soft team, and I hate anybody who's watching. I doubt any Miami Dolphins are watching. Don't kill me, but they're just a soft team. The mentality's soft, the physicality up front. Kenneth Grant's a guy I would take at 13. Dante, how do you feel about him?
So I kind of view him like I view Tyler Warren, where to me, Grant is a problem solver, right? Exactly. It's less about what is the value of nose tackle in the top 15. It's more about Kenneth Grant makes Zach Sealer better. He makes Chop Robinson better. He makes Jordan Brooks better. And then whatever you get out of him is also incredibly valuable, and he has a ton of upside. So I think I'm lower on Kenneth Grant, like overall, than consensus, but I am certainly in favor of the Dolphins selecting him at 13th overall. I think he makes a lot of sense for them specifically. And again, I kind of view him as a player who brings more to the table for the Dolphins than maybe face value would indicate. I think he just comes in, and if you draft Kenneth Grant, you feel like you've fixed several issues as opposed to just one. And that's incredibly appealing to me as a team on the fringe of the playoff picture that has a ton of holes. And so if I can fill multiple types of holes with a player like Kenneth Grant, that's incredibly appealing. So I'd be totally on board with them selecting him at 13.
Yeah, and I think like I mentioned, 0 tech, 1 tech, 3. He can do it all. Like he can play 3 downs because to just his size and athleticism. I wanted to see him work out, but I think this guy like ran sub 5 when he was like 360. So
standing next to him at podium sessions was humbling.
Yeah,
it was.
So it's real. It's real. Then
man.
it's real. Yes. Huh?
Yes.
All right, some other guys. I mean, I can name a bunch. Who do you like out of that group? Who worked out? There's a lot of guys I can mention here.
Man, the better question is who don't I
Don't you
like?
like? Yeah,
I'll just rattle off some names
yeah.
here. Derek Harmon from Oregon, I thought was really good. His
Chris Jo-
on-field stuff was
I called him
awesome.
a Chris Jones like.
Yeah, he looks really nice. Darius Alexander from Toledo, I'm
Oh,
a big fan of. I got to interview him at the Senior Bowl. I was up close and personal for his practices as well. He dominated. He actually tested a little bit better than I thought he would. I thought he'd test well. I wasn't sure I put him in the elite category.
yeah. He went sub 5, right? He was sub 5.
Yeah, he ran well. His 10-yard split was great. I wanted to see that explosiveness, right? Because you watch him at Toledo, and it's like, okay, he's killing these guys, but like, is it real? It's real. Yeah, it's real. I've seen it in person twice.
Didn't he have a pick 6 in the bowl game or something like that?
Yeah, he hurdled somebody.
Yeah. Just doing those kind of
I
things.
I was watching that at a sports bar in Florida, and I was like, oh man, I'm running to the tape when I get home.
Yeah, who is this guy?
Yeah. So Alexander was awesome. Alfred Collins, a completely different player from Texas. I think he's more of your stout run stuffer type, but I think if you take him on day 2, he's going to come in and start and be a really productive player for you.
He weighed in heavier than he was 330 plus.
Yeah, I think he's just leaning into the I'm a nose tackle thing, and you know what?
No,
more power to you, man.
I agree with him. Guys, a lot of experience. You put him in day 1, he starts for you.
Yes.
And at 48, if you want to do that, I'm okay with that.
I agree. Just like I'll go real quick here since we're pushing an hour. Jordan Phillips from Maryland, Jamari Caldwell from Oregon are 2 nose tackles I would highlight. Some more like 3-tech gap penetration guys, TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee.
Okay, I'll name a couple of guys, a linebacker to go quick. I'm a Schlesinger guy. I have this dream, okay? Kind of like Grant in round 1, Schlesinger in round 2. We got like Zach. We got like Zach and Tim Bowens up to like set it up. This guy is so instinctive, man. I know he's light, and he's got the curly blonde hair. But man, he's really. I mean, I haven't seen a guy that instinctive. I mean, when he reads and reacts, it's quick, man. Now he's a little small, he's light, but man, what are your thoughts on Schlesinger? And I'll tell you another guy, Jod Campbell. I think he's a guy that people forgetting at 13. He's that good of a player, though.
Yeah, I mean, those are the 2 best linebackers in the class, in my opinion. Agreed. I think Campbell obviously was phenomenal. I was at his podium session. He's really well spoken. He's a smart guy. He clearly understands his role as a linebacker in the defense. I think he's a good pick at 13. As for Schlesinger, I was really impressed that he came in as the heaviest linebacker at the group. He was the heaviest linebacker at the combine this year, and he ran really well. And so that's a great sign because, as you mentioned, one of the knocks that you would have on Schlesinger is that he's a bit undersized. But, I mean, he came in at an okay weight. It's not the best weight in the world. He's not, there are going to be a few plays every once in a while where, guys get into his chest. It happens. Linebacker's hard. I feel bad for those guys. They're in a no-win situation these days. But like you said, I think Schwesh has really good instincts. I was super impressed with his coverage ability too. I just think he understands how routes are developing in front of him and how to break and close down windows. So I really like him and Campbell. I think the rest of the linebacker group, I think is okay. I think those 2 guys at the top, though, are like very, very good. Campbell's going to be probably a top 20 player for me. Schlesinger is probably going to be like a top 35 player. So I really like both guys.
If he dropped to 48, I'm running the card to the table over Schlesinger.
That's fine with me.
And the thing is, he mentioned at 242. I was surprised. I think it's because he didn't run. He probably bulked up. I think at his pro day, you'll probably see him drop to like 235. Even that's good, though. And again, combine means something. The 20 reps, that shows raw strength. You know what I mean? Like that is important for a guy like him. So I'm hauling him. All right, let's quickly go to the safety group. I don't love the safety group after the top. Emon Wari at 13, Malachi. I think that's where we start and end the conversation. Starts Emon Wari. Would you take either guy at 13, and who would you take?
I think I might be the last guy on the planet that would take Malachi Starks at 13. I like him, man. I don't like if I'm wrong about Starks, I'm wrong.
Natural. He's natural, though, man.
I can't get over how smart he is, the ball skills, the versatility. It's just
smooth.
Yeah, I just have a hard time believing he's going to be a bad football player.
Yeah.
So he would still be on my board at 13. I'm not an Eman Wari guy. He's a weird player. I don't.
The tape is good, though. the
So
tape is pretty good.
I don't think it's bad. I don't
Yeah.
think it's bad. I think he's going to be inside my top 40. So I don't
Yeah.
hate him. I don't think he's a bad football player, but like, I don't like safeties that can't turn like that. You're a safety, dude. Like your
Yeah.
first job is coverage. I think to me, he is a player that has to go somewhere with a really forward thinking, creative defensive coordinator that is willing to kind of let him to almost create a role for him within the defense. I don't know that you can go out on Sunday and just say, Nick Emanwari is our starting strong safety, and we're going to play him for 98% of the snaps as strong safety and just call it a day. I think you're setting him up for failure in that. I think you need to figure out a way to get him close to the line of scrimmage consistently. I think you need to find a way to get him into a robber role in the middle of the field where he can use some of that linear speed to break downhill. If I don't know that if you put him in like cover 2, if you drop him into deeper zones, that he's going to be overly effective. I don't know that that's going to be his thing. So for the Dolphins specifically, though, as a team that runs a lot of cover 3, I do think that they're one of the teams, and with Anthony Weaver, that you could get something out of him kind of resembling, like, I don't like bringing this up because he's one of my highest graded players ever at this position, but like you kind of almost have to do the Kyle Hamilton thing that you did.
Yeah, with the Baltimore Weaver,
Weaver
connection.
Different players, different roles, but the Ravens kind of created the Kyle Hamilton position in the Ravens defense because they were like, this guy's so unique. I think you have to do the same thing with Emanwari, and that just kind of worries me as a general scout, right? It's just like, like if he goes to Brian Flores, a guy who really knows how to make the use of those types of players, you like him. I think Anthony Weaver's a good spot for him, but he goes to one of these teams that doesn't really have that defensive coordinator in the building. I start to get a little bit worried about his transition.
Who do you think goes first if you had to guess today?
Probably Emanwari. That seems to be where the people who are smarter than me are putting it. And so I'm going to die on my Malachi Starks hill. If I die, I die.
The other safeties, I mean, the Penn State kids, I like Billy Bowman, but I don't love this group beyond the first two guys. All right, we'll wrap it up. Anything on the corner? Harrison 4.28, fastest guy. Darian Porter ran well. Anything that stood out to you in the corner position at the combine?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a weird corner group just because I think you have so many questions, right? Is Travis Hunter a corner is going to be a question guys ask.
Yeah.
Will Johnson had a meh year and was injured. Siobhan Ravel's coming off the ACL tear. Darian Porter is a one-year starter who is at Iowa State for 6 years. Why did it take him that long to get on the field? He's a wide receiver convert. You have a lot of questions. Benjamin Morrison has the hip injury. So to me, like, I think the Dolphins could invest in a corner. I wrote about why I think Jahdae Barron from Texas could be an option at 13.
Yes.
I think he gives you enough versatility. I think he's a scheme fit in what the Dolphins want to do. So that would probably be the name that pops to me, and he tested very well. So he would be a guy that I think will be on their board at 13. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. It helps you if you retain Kader Kohu, put Kohu wherever he's most comfortable. Barron just kind of takes the other spot, and you kind of roll with Kohu, Ramsey, and Barron. That's very appealing to me. I think he gives you a lot of versatility, and I think he's a good scheme fit.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I was on another show. I said Jahdae Barron probably helped himself the most because deep speed was a question. He actually did run. What he run 4.4 flat, 4.39, something like that. But he's a Swiss Army knife back there, and he has all the traits the Dolphins are going to like. I know they like him. And the question is, I could see that being the pick and Dolphin fans hating it, right? But he's a hag of a football player. But and if Will Johnson, I don't think Will Johnson makes it. But you need corner, and Will Johnson is probably one of the top 7 to 8 football players in this draft. I don't know how you feel about him, but don't sleep on the corner position at 13 because Barron or Johnson might be the 2 best players on your board there.
I agree. I'm in full agreement. I think corner is a big need. It's up there with guard for me.
I know fans are going to hate it. They're going to hate it.
Yeah, no, they're going to riot, but you can't go out there on Sunday with just Jalen Ramsey and Kader Kohu. It's just not going to work. It's not going to be good. Whether you address it at 13, 48, 98 in free agency, whatever, you need another starter at corner. And so if it's at 13 because Will Johnson falls down the board, that's fine with me.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up. We had so much fun. I didn't anticipate going over an hour with you, but it was a great time. let's do it again, maybe sometimes before or after the draft, see what they actually pick. Everybody, please go follow Dante Collinelli. Dante, before we go, tell everybody where they can find your work that you got going on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Dante Collinelli. You can follow my work at SI Dolphins as well. And then I run a NFL draft Substack called The Casual Draft Analyst, where I post kind of my general draft takes, big boards. I did articles about the scouting combine, the Senior Bowl, blah, 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 usually once or twice a week. So it would mean a lot to me if you could follow me there and at SI Dolphins.
Yeah, do it, please. Dante does great work. I've been following Dante's work for a long time, and I reached out to him specifically because of the work he does. Everybody, we got this Thursday, the on-season with Jason Sarney and myself. We'll be going over some of the combine stuff, some of the Dolphins news and free agency, kind of preview that and go over the edge and linebacker group. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video and catch us on Thursday on the on-season at 8 p.m. All right, Dante, thank you so much. As always, guys, stay Fins faithful. We're out.